Survival horror. That, to me, has been a genre that has existed throughout my entirety of gaming and entirety of my life. I grew up playing some survival horror games, and to be honest with you, I could blame them for most of my sleeping disorders, but that's not really the point. The point is this: I have played quite a number of survival horror games growing up and up until now, and I've noticed that it's a genre that's really slowly faded away into the distance, slowly died down, and something that most people are not really interested in anymore. I do not know why. It seems as if most people who are still interested in survival horror games are those who are much older than the younger generation of gamers. I don't know why this is the case, but such has happened. It's as if the genre itself has failed to evolve as compared to the other genres that are just more popular nowadays, whether the games be good or bad. Now, growing up when I was young, I remember the good old days of just a few survival horror games that were really good. I remember the good old days of Clock Tower by Konami. I remember the days of Alone in the Dark. I remember the days of Resident Evil. I remember the days of Parasite Eve, Dino Crisis, and Silent Hill, just to name a few that I actually remember playing when I was young. And these are some series that have actually continued up until this date and or have stopped a few years back. I remember in the PS2 era as well, there was a game once called Forbidden Siren. I forgot who had made the game, but it was an interesting take on an Asian horror style of survival horror. I actually wanted to play that game, but I never got the chance, and I sort of hoped it would have a future. But now we have The Evil Within. The Evil Within, to me, is the last hope, or at least the last branch I'm reaching to while I'm falling down a tree. It's going to be a survival horror. It's going to be made by Shinji Mikami's team at Tango Games with the help of Bethesda. And to be honest with you, it has been many years since a survival horror game has really given me the fear and the joy of playing the game, such as the ones I used to play when I was still young. As I grew up slowly, I slowly got detached from survival horror. It stopped having that effect, that immersion, and that ambience about it that made me interested and scared. It really just became mundane. And to me, I'm hoping that The Evil Within will become the lifeline to a whole new evolution or genre of survival horror. Why am I saying this? I honestly don't know. The reason why I'm saying I don't know is that it's not as if Shinji Mikami has done anything out of the ordinary or revamped a certain system and come up with something new. No, he himself is saying that this is his swan song. Mikami-san says that this is, he hopes that this will be his last and final project as a games director. Bear in mind, this was the guy who brought to life Resident Evil. This guy was really important in Capcom as a company before they fired him. And you may wonder, if it's so important, why was he fired? Just so you know, there was a time when most Japanese companies like Square Enix and Capcom were firing their top staff that actually created the games that people became to know and love. But also, that was also the beginning of the downfall of most of these Japanese countries and their influence on international markets. They also began to downfall during this same time. Now you may think to yourself, games like Beautiful Joe, Devil May Cry, Ace Attorney, Shinji Mikami had his hands in that. Who do you think brought you Vanquished? Who do you think was not in charge, but who was in cahoots with Platinum Games? Shinji Mikami. Who do you think made that beautiful game Resident Evil 4 with Leon? It was Shinji Mikami as well. His creative prowess has made him, over the past decade and more so, just create and help create very good games. And any of you who know a game called God Hand that was made by Clover Studios, he also had a hand in that as well. So I have some sliver of faith when it comes to Shinji's work. I've experienced it, I have played the games, and I have to admit that when Shinji Mikami was removed from Capcom as a company, you could see, for example, the decline in what Resident Evil became. It's as if Resident Evil 4 was this peak in the Resident Evil prowess. Everyone now knew what Resident Evil was and how great a game it truly was, even though they might have not played the first 3 Resident Evil games. But then as soon as they removed him, Resident Evil 5 came out, which was a game I actually played a lot. Both the story and the mercenaries, I really played a lot of hours of that game. But it really lacked the finesse that Shinji Mikami had made in the previous games. To me, it just felt like they took Resident Evil 4 and its entire system, since it worked, and they just remade it within the new generation of gaming at the time, which was the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 and the PCs at that time. And they just took it and redid the concepts that Mikami had done. The Resident Evil 6, personally to me, was just a shame. But this is not a video about mocking the most recent Resident Evil. That's not really the point. My point is Evil Within. My point is Shinji Mikami. Like I've explained to you why I personally believe that this man has some great creativity. Now, the Evil Within, from what I have seen, is going to be a survival horror, of course. It's gonna focus on elements of scarcity, in the sense that there will be weapons and equipment within the levels of the game, but they won't be as replenishable as most other games. I'm not sure, I have not played the game because it's not yet out, but there were times within Resident Evil 3, for example, where you'd always tell yourself, I'm gonna save my grenade launcher ammunition for a rainy day. Maybe Nemesis is gonna be around that corner. Then you find yourself 10 hours into the game, you're blasting through the game, you're almost finished with the game, and you've got like a bajillion grenade launcher rounds in your inventory that you never used because you are saving them for a rainy day. Now, Shinji Mikami has said that he has acknowledged his legacy within survival horror, and he has seen that these have been some of the mistakes within the game, that the games would promote scarcity of items, but you could save so well that you would have an abundance of supply. Now he wants to try and make it a little bit harder, in the sense that he wants players to use more equipment and more items to dispatch certain situations and certain foes. This way the game will force you to either use up your ammunition to get out of a very dangerous place of which you could die, or you run away. Now, if you run away, the thing is, you may be able to get away from one problem, but you may lead that one problem into another if you do not know where to run. So this is a good mechanical change for a first playthrough, but I don't think it will be as effective when you play the game for the second time. You now know the routes throughout the stage, unless there's a new game plus system where it changes the spawn points of the enemies. I'm not too sure about this, but I don't know. He's incorporated elements of stealth. That's one thing also I believe that has lacked within survival horror for a very, very long time throughout this entire generation. Most survival horror games these days are just you against a horde of monsters, live or die. They've lacked that finesse of making you scared, making the hallways dark, you don't know where to go, and you only have 2 bullets in your gun. What are you going to do? They lack that finesse that they used to have back in the day, in the days of Alone in the Dark, where you'd probably have, you just picked up a gun, but you only have a flashlight and 3 or 4 bullets. You know that there are 5 or 6 enemies behind the next door you're going through, but you also know that there are 2 routes behind the enemies, so maybe you can use 2 or 3 bullets to lure half the horde to one side of the stage while you run around the other using your flashlight to blind them. These sort of mechanics are what made the intricacies of horror games, what made them really difficult and challenging throughout multiple playthroughs, or at least that's what I experienced when I used to play them as a child. I'm not sure how the situation will be now. Most of the developers of the Evil Within have said that most of the times the wisest option will be not to instantly aim and shoot. There will be elements around the stage that you can use and manipulate to actually dispatch your foes without actually having to use all your ammunition on the enemies. There'll be times whereby, for example, there could be proximity mines on the wall. You could run towards the proximity mine, putting yourself in danger, but if you're able to dodge away from the mine just in time or run past it and then let the enemies get close, you can shoot the mine and then it blows up. And then you can use that to harm the enemies, or you can get things from the environment and hit them with that, or fire off at a hose with gas and set them on fire. Small intricacies like that. It's nothing spectacular, but it's things that have worked in the past, and some of the things that have been neglected because most people have thought this is too small and insignificant. Besides that, I honestly don't know. I personally believe this game is going to be... I don't believe it's going to be good. I'm not going to give it the 100% right now, like 100% hope that it will be good. But it's a wish that this game will be good, because this to me is not going to just be the next survival horror of my life that I'll play, but this might be one of the last survival horrors from Shinji Mikami that I'll ever play. So to me, this is me receiving this game and me saying it's good feels as if it's a gift back to Shinji Mikami for all the work he's done throughout my entire life. Even though, you know, it's not like he knew I existed, but I appreciate the man's work. He tries. We may all fall short sometimes, but hey, what can be said? What are your thoughts on The Evil Within? What do you think the game is going to become? Do you think the game is going to be good? If you think so, leave a comment in the box below, and we can see when the game comes out if our comments were true. You've heard my points of view. I like the small intricacies. I like the whole point of having to run and luring enemies. I like the whole use of tactics to preserve your ammunition instead of blasting it away in a similar fashion as Dead Space, for example. I like the way things are scarce within the game. I like the way the enemies are able to kill you as easy as you can kill them. And I like the way that just some enemies you don't mess with without the correct equipment. You can't just use like a small little pin to kill something the size of the entire room. It just doesn't work that way. So anyway guys, thanks for your time. It's just me rambling about The Evil Within.